Um, my husband had talked to and I had talked about me speaking today, and I had brought up something to him about the Lord. I felt the Lord was putting on my heart, and so I thought, okay, well, I'll just speak Mother's Day. Well, then he said, yeah, I want you to get a PowerPoint together, and I've never used a PowerPoint. And as you can see today, we're still not using a PowerPoint. So one of these days, I'm going to have my husband sit down with me and show me how to do everything with PowerPoint. So I'm all nice. She's up here saying, it's really easy, Miss Angela. It's really easy. They'll beat you up later. Can you show me how to use the PowerPoint and put it up here? Can you show me? Okay. Never mind, Pastor. She can show me how to do it. Okay. Mandy will help me. Mandy is in kids' church. She is one of my most well-behaved children, and she is one of the only ones who will ever memorize her memory verses. And so a lot of times I'll come in with a big bag of candy for all the kids, and everybody who memorizes their memory verse, gets a piece of candy out of the bag, and so none of the other kids did, so she just gets the whole bag. So I think she kind of likes that deal. Is that a pretty good deal, Mandy? Yeah, the kids are awesome. So I didn't have the PowerPoint ready, and we've had a lot going on this past couple of weeks, and I'm like, God, I don't feel prepared. God, I don't feel prepared. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take time Saturday, and I'm going to sit out by the dock, and I'd been working on my message. I'm going to go sit out on the dock, and I'm going to go over my message again and just make sure it's all ready for Sunday morning. And then one of my girls asked me, hey, Mom, can me and the baby come and stay with you Saturday? I'm like, oh, yeah, of course, because that's what Mother's Day is about. It's about spending time, for me, it's about spending time with my kids, about my family. And those of you know, I have Joey and Joshua, who are my biological children, and I've had the honor and privilege of getting to raise them and watch them growing up. And then, Brittany, you were 15 when you and Joey started dating, weren't you? It was right before you turned 16.
No, I was already 16.
You were already 16? Joey's face. Sorry. So Brittany was 16 when her and Joey started dating, and even though Joey and Brittany aren't dating anymore, we kept Brittany. And with Brittany, we ended up getting her sister Tristan, and then I was blessed with a grandbaby through Tristan, and so we are very, very blessed. So when I talk about my children, everybody's like, okay, so which ones are really yours? Like, yeah, no, they're all really mine, but biologically it's just Joey and Josh. So Tristan and the baby came out. We spent the day with them swimming, and again, so last night I'm thinking, okay, Lord, I really need to go over this again. And he just kind of spoke to me about, my message, the message that I had planned all the past couple of weeks that God had put on my heart a while back. And he's like, just listen to your message, Angela. And so that's why I'm going to leave you with that. And you'll see what I'm getting at in just a moment. I'm reading today with my nice green glasses out of John chapter 6, starting with verse 1. After this, Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, and a huge crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was performing by healing the sick. So Jesus went up to the mountain and sat down there with his disciples. Now the Passover, a Jewish festival, was near. Therefore, when Jesus looked up and noticed a huge crowd coming toward him, he asked Philip, where will we go buy bread so these people can eat? He asked to test him for himself, for he knew himself what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 denarii worth of bread won't be enough for each of them to even have a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, there's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many? Then Jesus said, have the people sit down. There were plenty of grass in the place, so they sat down. The men numbered about 5,000. Then Jesus took the loaves, and after giving thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also with the fish, as much as they wanted. When they were full, he told the disciples, "Collect the leftovers so that nothing is wasted." So they collected them and filled 12 baskets with the pieces from the 5 barley loaves that were left over by those who had eaten. When the people saw the signs he had done, they said, "This really is the prophet who was come unto the world." Therefore, when Jesus knew that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Now, I love this story because the first thing I want to look at is where it says, the men numbered about 5,000. So if there was 5,000 men, there's no telling how many children and women were following behind with them as well. But back then, when they would count people, they didn't count the children, and they didn't count the women. They were not counted. And it always surprised me, and I always think, with the 5,000 people there, and they went out to collect food and see how much food was available, there was only one little boy who didn't even count, who was willing to give up his lunch. Now, do you really think out of 5,000 men, plus women and children, that little boy was the only one who had something that day? I kind of find it hard to believe. I imagine that there would have been a lot of people that did have a little bit of something to give, but they didn't have much. And I know with my babies are going to eat before anybody else. So if I only have a little bit, then I'm going to go and I'm going to feed my children to make sure my children are taken care of. I'm certainly not going to give it up for somebody else. That's, as a mama's heart, how we think about things. We're like, no, we're going to take care of our babies. I remember many times when the boys were little, me and their dad, we would go around with holes in the shoes or whatever, but the boys, we made sure they had new shoes when school would start. Things were a little bit rough when they were young, and we didn't always have a lot of money, but our kids were always what come first. And so I was thinking about what are the different reasons that people wouldn't have given what they had that day. But my main one was thinking, I only have a little bit. I only have a little bit. That little boy had just a little lunch that was made that morning by a mommy who didn't know that she was preparing the way for the Lord to work a miracle. When she got up, her concern was taking care of her child. And we know it was a mama because back then daddies really didn't do that sort of thing. That was the mama's job. Mamas would get up with the kids. They would get the kids, pack their lunches, fix everybody's lunch, and then everybody would go about their day. Well, mom would stay home and get everything ready and do what she needed to do. So there was a really good chance dad did not make lunch that day. It was mom. So she got up that morning, and she probably to this day she would be gone now, but I know when she got up that morning and she was preparing that little boy's lunch, she didn't know that we were going to be talking about her all these years later. Because in her faithfulness of getting up and taking care of her child that morning, she prepared the way for a miracle. But it didn't stop there. See, she did her part. She made sure her child was taken care of. So she prepared that lunch, and she sent him on his way, not knowing what his day was going to hold. She just wanted to make sure he was taken care of. And then they're all meeting, and all of a sudden, everybody's been listening to Jesus, and they're learning, and they're excited. And it's like, starting to get a little done, a little longer in the day. These people are hungry. So what we need to do, Simon Peter, you run over to Jordan Valley, and if you could pick up a bunch of hummus and some manna and some pita bread and bring it back, and so we can feed all these people. Or go up to the mall, get a few bag lunches, bring back so we can feed these people. Nowadays, that's what we would do. I know on some Sundays we've had everybody bring food, and then we had extra people come. We were going to eat after church, and we look, and don't have enough drinks. Okay, we're missing this. Okay, here, Brittany, take my card. Here, Joey, take my card. Go get another box of chicken from Winn-Dixie. Get some drinks. Go ahead, just get some potato salad already, made up, and come back. See, that's how we handle it. We just go ahead and take care of it ourselves and do it. These people weren't in a position to do that. There was no mall to run to get hummus or food, or, there was not a Chick-fil-A close by, not a McDonald's, which the kids would have been disappointed in had they known what McDonald's was then. So they couldn't just do that. They couldn't just run and get something. And even if they could, even if there would have been a McDonald's way back then, I wonder how they would have made the Golden Arches. I'm not sure. But even if they would have had the Golden Arches back then, they would not have had enough money to go and, sorry, my granddaughter's up here. She has her flowers and she's using them as makeup. So, they would not have had enough money to go and buy for everybody. Because I'm like, okay, Lord, I want to take these kids to the zoo. I'm trusting you to provide. So if I'm, trusting the Lord for just this handful of kids, I imagine what it was the disciples were thinking. Okay, God, this isn't going to work. Even if we did go and we bought bread, we couldn't even give anybody or everybody even just a little bit. But you see, God already knew what he was planning to do. The Lord knew it. The Lord had it under control. So he said, okay, see what you can find. What they came back with was one little boy's willingness to share his lunch. I wish I knew how many people really that day had food. But you see, it really didn't matter how many other people had food that day. It didn't matter how many other people packed a lunch that day. The Lord needed one willing vessel. He just needed one. He needed one person to step up and say, I will give you what I have. So this little boy that didn't even count, that out of all the books that this story is written in, the little boy's lunch was only mentioned, that it was a little boy's lunch in one of those books that I could see. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. But I kept going through, and I was reading each story out of all the different Gospels, and I'm like, okay, where's the little boy's lunch? Well, it was only mentioned, the lunch itself and the little boy were mentioned in one book. And he brought that lunch up, and he gave what he had. It wasn't much. But what did they do when the little boy brought up that lunch? When the little boy gave what he had? They didn't laugh or mock him and say, what is that gonna do? I'm sorry, but I was very hungry last night. Had my husband brought up just a little cracker and handed me a cracker, I would have laughed at him and possibly thrown the cracker back. Because when you're hungry, you're not really godly. And possibly thrown the cracker back at him and said, what am I supposed to do with this? Is there anybody who gets cranky when they're hungry besides me? Yeah. Thought so. Especially the women. Don't mess with us when we're hungry. I see fingers pointing to be a fly on the wall at their house tonight. What'd you say in church? No. Okay, so the little boy brought his lunch, and nobody said, okay, what do you think we're supposed to do with this? Well, they were probably thinking that, but they probably didn't want to say that to Jesus. And Jesus didn't say, oh, that's not enough. Jesus thanked the Lord thanked God for what he had. He thanked God for that little bit of lunch to feed over 5,000 people. He didn't fuss. God, what have you done? You've sent me here with these hungry people. That one over there is really hungry and would probably eat me if they could. Okay? And all you've given me is just this little bit to work with. What am I supposed to do with it? He didn't do that. He lifted it up and he thanked God for what he had. And I think that is amazing, because I know with me sometimes I'm looking at my pile of bills and I'm looking at the size of my check and I'm thinking, okay, now how are we going to make this fit with this? It's not so easy. And I'm like, Lord, I need a miracle. And then Lord saying, yeah, no, you just need to stop spending more than you make. But we're like, okay, God, that's not going to work. I've just got this little bit. I need a lot more than that. And I think many times in the church and in our own lives, we're all asking God for a miracle. We're saying, Lord, I really need this in my life. I need you to work a miracle in my life. God, I need to lose weight. I need a miracle. And God's saying, no, you don't need a miracle. You need to lay off the Krispy Kreme donuts and you need to get on a treadmill. Okay? So, see, I can't ask God. We ask God for these things. We say, God, bless us. God, work a miracle in our lives. And all of those people out there, they were out there and they wanted to see the Lord work a miracle. They wanted to see God move, but only one of them was willing to do what was possible so God could do the impossible. Many times in our lives we do that. We're like, okay, Lord, I need a miracle. I need a miracle. God, I need you to bless my life. But we're not even willing to do what's possible. We're not even willing to give up what the little things he asks for so that he can work that miracle in our lives. And let me tell you, we can't expect God to do the impossible, to work the miracle, when we're not even willing ourselves to do what's possible. And God has really been dealing with me, and I'm going to be honest with you, I should be sitting there listening, because he's dealt with me about this over and over when it comes to the children's ministry and different things that I see within the church. I'm like, okay, God, you've given me this vision. You have given me this vision. I know this is from you. You want us to bring these kids in. You want us to love on these kids. You see, we have a whole neighborhood that we've been ministering to on Lake Drive. Those kids truly need a miracle in their lives. Those parents truly need a miracle in their lives. And as a church, we're like, Lord, work a miracle. Bring us these people, Lord. Lord, we want to bring you to these people. We want these people to know you. Lord, we want to see this church grow and unbelievers coming in and being saved and being delivered from things. God, do this for us. And then, well, sorry, I had to cancel that Bible study this past week. My car broke down. Oh, goodness, I was so busy this week, I really didn't have time to prepare a proper children's church message. And I know, Lord, that these kids would come in, these parents would come into church, and they would watch these kids do a dance, but, Lord, I just don't have the time. I can't ask God to do the impossible when I won't even do the possible. School's coming up. What God has put on my heart to do was when school starts back. School is ending. School will be starting back in August. when, especially our bus ministry children and the children who need it in the church, go back to school. I want them to be able to go back to school with at least 3 sets of new clothes, a pair of shoes, a pack of underwear, and a pack of socks. I want us to be able to send these kids back to school with these things. Many of them, I asked some of them a couple weeks ago, how many in here is your mom or your dad in jail? I had 17 children in the class that day. 7 of the children raised their hand that one of their parents was in jail. I see the kids coming to school or coming to church in clothes that are little more than rags. They sometimes smell so bad you can hardly stand to hug them. But they come, you know why? Because we love on them. And we hug them and we let them know that they are loved. Little Aiden, he's recently moved, but Aiden would come up every Sunday. He would just wrap his arms around me and he'd tell Joey, Joey, this is my mama. And yet I would see time and time again him come in and not have enough. I had a little boy come up to me one time, and I was having a really bad day, and I was like, Lord, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this. I'm tired. Why am I at church on a Wednesday night? I want to be home. I was just saying, I know I'm the pastor's wife, but you know what? We all feel that way. Is there anybody in here who would like to just stay home on a Wednesday night sometimes? After you've worked all day, is there anybody who loves, after working all day, having to go back out once you get home? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay, so I'm being honest. I'm just being real. And I was sitting there, and we're eating dinner. We used to have Wednesday night dinners. And we're eating dinner, and a little boy sitting next to me touches my arm, and he just rubs my arm, and he said, Miss Angela, thank you. I was like, why? What? Thank you for what? He's like, and he was eating. And his words to me was, thank you for feeding me. You see, he had been going hungry because Mom was too busy and too much into her drugs to worry about buying food to have in the house. I knew this because when the grandmother went to the house, there was a little open can of green beans in the house. The child was in the same clothes he had worn the previous time she had seen him, which had been about a week. And this is what that little boy was living in. And my heart broke because I was complaining just about having to come to church that night. I was complaining about, I was feeling sorry for myself. I was tired. It had been a rough day at work. And I just wanted to go home and relax. But had we not had that service that night, because see, this little boy was coming during these times. We just didn't know that he wasn't being fed like he needed to be. The little boy would have went without eating again. And I know at times we get tired. And I know at times we feel like, God, I don't have much to offer. I don't have much to offer. These little kids, my husband can tell you, every time a bunch of them come up that are in a bad situation, I'm trying to figure out a way to add a room to my house. He's like, Angela, we cannot fit those kids in our house. But he'll tell you, and always, do you think we could just take them for a little bit? Do you think we could do this? Do you think we could do that? And see, and I know in my heart, I know I can't take them all. But just like that little boy couldn't feed all those people, I serve a God who can. That little boy gave his lunch to a God who can do it because he was willing to do the possible. See, he couldn't feed 5,000 people. That was impossible. But because what he had, He was willing to give up. He was willing to do everything he could do. He was willing to give what he had to the Lord. The Lord took that and fed over 5,000. We're still talking all these years later about that little boy who had no idea when he gave up that lunch that he was providing the way for a miracle. That mama had no idea that morning when she was making that lunch that she was making a way for a miracle. But I can tell you something that they probably did know because of how children and how women were seen then and still seen that way in some other countries. I bet they knew that they didn't count. They didn't have rights. They knew they didn't count, but they didn't let that stop them. That mama still got up that morning and made that breakfast, even though she wasn't as considered as important as men are. That little boy still gave his lunch, even though he wasn't as important as the men were. They still did what they needed to do. And I love that when it was at the end, what Jesus did. Glasses. Turn 40 and I can't see anymore. Okay. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This really is the prophet who was to come into the world." Therefore, when Jesus knew what they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Jesus didn't want the credit for what he had done. Jesus didn't want to be made a king. Jesus was obedient to his Father in heaven and knew that's where the glory needed to go. And as a church, I want to see all of us begin to step up. And I know we might not have much. We got a lot of empty seats right here. But we have a little bit. I don't have room to move all those kids into my house. I have tried. My husband doesn't like it when I try. I get in trouble. It's not a good situation. My heart says, yes, do it. And God's even up there sometimes saying, Angela, don't do it. And guess what Angela does? She does it anyway. And so I have to really, pray, okay, is this the Lord? Is this my heart? Is this me just not listening to my husband? What is this? So I don't have a lot. But one thing I can do, I can love you. I can be a mama. I can give you hugs when you come in on Sunday mornings. I can give what I can give. And then I can trust God to multiply it and to bless it. Because, see, there's a young girl here that I've been able to love on. And then I have a picture of her with some of our children that we've brought in on the bus ministry who mom's in jail. 2 of the children crying and her arm around each one of them, loving on them. And see, and then it's going to be those kids' turn to go and to love on somebody else because of what they did. And I hate that the woman who loved on me, the pastor's wife who loved on me and read me Bible stories, oh, how I hate that I can't go back and say, look what you prepared the way for. Look what you prepared the way for. So I want everybody in here to ask yourselves, okay, God, well, ask the Lord, what is it that I can give? What can I do? It may be that God asks you to buy a dress for a little girl who doesn't have one. It may be that God asks you to take a few moments out of your time to sit with a little kid who's crying because they miss their mommy because she's in jail. I don't know what God's going to ask of us, all of us. I know what he asks of me, and I don't know what he's asking of you. But I know if we want to see miracles in our personal lives, if we want to see miracles taking place in the church, and we want to see God move, that we have got to step out. We have got to give what we can give. We've got to be willing to give the possible. See, I don't need a God who can do the possible. I can do the possible. Pastor Joe can do the possible. Brittany can do the possible. Thomas can do the possible. Isaac can do the possible. Me? They can do the possible. See, I need a God who can do the impossible. Because what I can do only goes so far. But again, I can't expect God to do the impossible when I can't even step as far as the possible goes. So I'm asking you as a church, and also in your individual lives, what is it as a church that God has called us to do to minister to our community, to minister to the children that God's brought into our lives? In our own personal lives, what miracles do we need? As I said, I need to lose weight. It's starting to affect my health. Got to give up the donuts and get on the treadmill. Unless God just really wanted, but I don't think that's going to happen. Me and especially, I'm saying, I've got to be willing to do the possible. And then God will meet us at the impossible. Every head bowed, every eye closed. Lord, I thank you for your blessings. I thank you for your love. And I thank you for loving me, even though I seem to come so short sometimes. God, I pray as a church you would help us to stand up and give you everything that you are asking us to give you. God, you are so generous and you are so gracious that you give us way more than enough. God, help us to give just what you ask of us to give. Help us to trust you to do what needs to be done with it. Lord, for our families who need you in their lives, God, I pray you would help our light shine in their lives. God, for these children who need miracles in their lives, their parents who need miracles in their lives, they need to know you, Lord. I pray you would help us to reach out and do what needs to be done. So God, you can work miracles in their lives.